Hello, everyone. Time for another edition of Off the Hook with Matty D. Now, before I intro my guest, I'm going to play something for you that we recorded on site. Here we go.
You know, I've been coming to this area for almost 25 years. This is your first time here. What are your expectations? What are you looking forward to the most?
I would say probably just catching a species I've never caught before. You know, this is going to be a completely new experience for me. Not only catching fish on a fly rod of this magnitude, but also just catching the species. I've never caught them conventionally fishing, which is what, you know, I'm used to for pretty much my whole life.
So you have fished spin forever.
Yep.
You are always on the James, catching big stripers. I mean, you have a 40-incher to your name. That's an incredible fish. Do you think, and I'm trying to ask you to project here, that that's going to compare to what you might get here today or this week?
Yeah. Well, I didn't expect to catch a 40-inch striper first off, right? It was in pitch dark at night, no one else around. It hit, and I went for a wild ride, drag peeling, just intense. You've kind of set me up well here. I've watched some videos online, so I kind of have a little bit of a feel for the type of experience, but you don't know till you know. So my expectation is to just be open-minded and just try something new for the very first time and listen to people and just learn. Man, that's really what I'm here for.
Welcome to New York and welcome to the Salmon River. Let's go have fun, buddy.
Hey.
That is Ron Binstock, who's joining me now. Ron, do you even remember when we recorded that?
I do. It was forever ago.
It was. Yeah. So, okay, I'm not going to ask you for your overall assessment yet of the trip, but I did kind of set you up there. First of all, I loved your answer when you talked about, we talked about the 40-inch striped bass that you hooked into on the James at the 14th Street Bridge. It took you for a ride. And the one thing I asked you to do was to kind of project. Did you think that the fish we were going to go for were going to take you for a ride? The answer is
no. Not to the ride that I experienced for sure.
Right.
You know, like I said, I watched some videos. I saw people you don't know until you know. And you don't know until you're holding a rod in your hand and you're experiencing it. So it was a heck of a ride, a ton of fun.
It was an amazing time. First of all, my entire group, from myself to Phil to Kirk to Paul, Alex, Steve, Joey, we loved having you. And before I could even invite you back, they invited you back. So you're welcome to come back at any time.
Thank
first
you.
of all. It was
I'm honored.
A lot of fun. We had some of the greatest weather we could ever have, for sure. I mean, it was incredible. While we're talking here, I'm going to bring up a video that I put together, and we're going to let this play. We had sunny skies. We had temperatures near 80. I mean, when we talked about this, I gave you a list. I'm like, sweatshirts, neoprene, this. I mean, you prepare for 30s and 20s, and none of that happened. It was like
my gloves got no use. You know, my thermals, minimal use. I mean, yeah, you set me up good, but we didn't need it. You're right. It was crazy.
We didn't need it at all. Okay, so for people that don't know, we went up to the Salmon River in Pulaski, New York, and you have followed me on Instagram, on my Facebook page. I follow you. You saw some of the fishing that I've done over the past 30-plus years up there, and you saw me talk about salmon and steelhead. And we went for, the week that we went for, we were really targeting steelhead, which you had never gone for before.
Yep.
But you've seen pictures. Once, and we're going to get to some pictures, some video here. Once you actually landed a fish, which is a trick in itself, we're going to talk about that. What did you think about the species? Totally majestic, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've never seen one in person, obviously. Beautiful fish.
Yeah.
I mean, they likened, one of the guys on the trip called it a silver bullet.
Yeah.
Clearly a silver bullet. Just the way they hit and the way that they just kind of go ballistic, like within a millisecond, is like nothing I experienced before.
So in this video right here, what we just saw you holding was a king salmon. One of the things we did, we first got there on Sunday, was my goal with a couple of my guys was to teach you how to cast. Because yes, we're using fly rods, but we're using split shot for weight. We're roll casting or flip casting. We're not traditional overhand double hauling. It's a little bit different. And we took you to the fly zone, which we affectionately call the petting zoo because there's tons of spawning salmon there. and an older gentleman who you struck a conversation with. You said, hey, this is my first time here. He put a fish on and gave you his rod. And that was your first experience to the tug of a salmon.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was, he kind of called me over from a distance, and I'm thinking at first, it's like, am I like crossing the line or doing something wrong? And he kind of motioned to go over to him, and yeah, he handed me his rod, and it was really, it was my first experience on a salmon, and it was really, really cool.
Really cool. All right, so let's talk about the casting, because here you're actually fighting a fish on a rock, which we affectionately call Rich's Rock, in a hole that I took you to.
Yeah.
You have taken fly casting lessons from Simone, from Current Culture, and very traditional. You fly fish down here. You go for bass and perch and sunnies. This was different. How long did it really take you to understand this type of cast?
Well, first let me say that when I went on this trip, I had been fly fishing for no more than 2 months.
Okay, there you go.
I mean, I literally kind of, my friend Bob and Aaron took me to the Jackson, and we fished a little for trout all day long on a 5-weight. At the end of the day, he's like, keep the rod. And I just kept using it and playing with it. Ultimately got the 7-weight through Simone, took that class you mentioned. Completely different kind of fishing up there. You know, I've got very little experience to begin with, but then I'm holding a 9-weight rod for the first time. It's got spay line on it. Didn't even know what spay line was until I went on the trip. And, you know, the split shot, you know, I'll be honest, I got some split shot marks on my back and the back of my head. Completely different. And I learned the entire week, I was just constantly evolving, tweaking my technique, getting feedback from you and others on the trip, how to just get a little better, not work so hard, because you can work really hard fishing like less than ideal technique versus kind of roll casting and being more finessey. So I learned, but I'm by no means an expert.
You know, but I think to your credit, and every one of my guys said this to me, you were so coachable. So I taught you on that Sunday into Monday, and I still tried to give you tips, right? But sometimes the way that I may say something may not resonate, whereas when Phil says something, or Kirk, or Steve, it begins to, that extra word or that different phraseology, then all of a sudden it's like, I got it, right? And really, honestly, you got it. Like, it was awesome to watch you evolve throughout the week. I conservatively estimate, I think you probably fought between 30 to 50 fish alone that week. You were on fire, dude. Really on fire.
Yeah. I had no idea that I would not land the vast majority of fish I hooked into. Completely, you know, just blew my mind. I will say you're right. Every person on the trip that's watched me, that just gave me a tip. It could be a sentence from a distance, or it could be them walking up to me saying, try it this way. I learned little techniques. If it was Kirk specifically, had me holding the line separately from the rod instead of kind of keeping my index finger on. It gave me that sensitivity to feel that bite that I wasn't previously feeling, because I really am just inexperienced. So you're right. Everybody was just really cool and very patient with me, and really mentored me the whole week, which was awesome.
It really was. So one of the things we did, you had GoPros. Kirk had we had more cameras and GoPros than we probably ever used. We dropped the GoPro in here, and what we're looking at, we dropped it in area fishing, and you could see all the steelhead tugged to the ground. And we're only fishing 1.5 to 2 feet of water in this particular spot. But the trick is, with the split shot, for those that don't know, you're having the split shot bounce on those rocks, and your leader off of or tipping it off of the split shot is 4 feet or a little bit less, and the fly is kind of wavering, and they strike because they're feeding. They're eating the salmon eggs that are coming up. So you're going for steelhead, and you're going for browns that are eating salmon eggs, which are dropping. So we're using all kinds of egg imitation flies. You used different flies, sucker spawn, scrambled eggs. You did the bead. I mean, you did everything. I don't think we ever got you on the spinning rod with the egg sacs, though, did we?
Yeah, no, not this time around.
No, it's all right. We'll get you on that. You know. Okay, so this was some really cool videos, and it continue to play. All right, so you mentioned one thing, and you're right. I kind of kept this hidden from you on the trip. a really good steelheader lands about 30% of the fish that you physically hook up to, which is so odd because I think you're used to, you hook a fish, 98% of the time you're landing it. But these fish run so ballistically. There was one I can remember, and you posted it in your video, I don't have it in this video, where you were in your backing in like 20 seconds, and you were like, I think I'm like losing all my backing. You were like really scared.
Oh, dude, I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And with the exception of the 40-inch bass, did you ever have a fish take you like that deep into line?
Absolutely not.
No.
No. In fact, my experience with fly fishing, I've never gone what they call gone to the reel before.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
And so I went to the reel where, you know, hands off the reel and you're just kind of letting it zip, right, to the backing. And then I only knew I went to the backing because something sounded different. And I look down and I see this really skinny line that like I'm not going to get my hands near because I'm thinking that's going to cut. This thing was just pull and drag.
Yeah.
So yeah, completely foreign to me.
It really was. Okay, so let's talk about the footing here too. This area that we're fishing, this is the lower wall. We fished the Douglaston Salmon Run, for those that are going to ask, which is a private stretch of water. We had to pay a daily access fee. But the reason why we fished that, I think you then started to see it, you get the freshest fish in that area. So because they're literally coming right out of the lake, they're streaming up, they are just full of pea and vinegar, right? They're running like crazy. They're eating like crazy. And it makes for an exciting day because you got to see it. You get pods of fish coming in. It's like nothing else.
Yeah, I heard the term angry water for the first time.
Yeah.
Right? Just kind of like a bubbling, a boiling of water that is very abrupt and it's gone as quick as it started. And you realize those are all really big fish. And they show up and they move upstream, they go back downstream. And if you're lucky enough to drift your fly right at the right spot, you can connect with one.
And you connected quite a bit, and then it's game on. Yeah, for sure. So in this area, this is video you actually shot. The guy with the rod is my nephew, Joey. The guy that's walking him is Kirk. And then I'm way down here. These rocks in this area, you experienced the Salmon River bath, as we all did. We all went down. These are nasty rocks in some areas.
Yeah.
Everything's an angle.
Yeah, I'm used to wading. The James River is wadable in certain areas. I'm used to wading. This is a completely different wading experience. You can see the water. It's pretty gin clear. But rocks, some are round, some are on an angle, some are flat. They're moss covered. You're kind of navigating around dead salmon that have reached the end of their life. You know, I never said watch the salmon as we're walking, you know, so my friend behind me doesn't step on it. Completely different kind of river experience.
It really, really was here. All right, so the species that we went for, we said we'd get into some salmon. You got into one. The guy gave you a rod. Steelhead were plentiful. Browns, few and far between. And one of the things I wrote in the thing when we talked and we were trading notes back and forth, I said, the Atlantic salmon is the unicorn. And that was the first fish you caught. Now, it was small, but it was like, oh my gosh. He got the unicorn out of the gate.
And I don't think I realized, you know, people kept telling me, you know, even throughout the week, how like kind of special that is. So how lucky, you know, to have connected with one.
Yeah, really, really fun for sure. You got to land fish, you got to net fish for people toward the end of the week. Once we realized that you understood how to kind of walk in the river, how difficult did you find it netting fish? Because there's a little art to that as well.
Yeah, the fish they see you, right? And when you approach them with the net or just splash because you're kind of walking quick, they just veer off and kind of beeline in another direction. So you have to try to be stealthy, but also at the same time, you got to dig that net in at the right time because you don't want to knock the fly loose or break the line or create a situation where it goes ballistic and just heads away from you. So I luckily didn't have to, there were certain times where you had to dance around for a while. You've done this for decades, so you were successful. I didn't have to work as hard as you did. I mean, you netted 2 fish at one time when Joey hooked up, and I'm like, I'm going to hook up. hooked up.
Oh, my
you
God.
netted 2 at a time.
I think there's some video of that coming up, or we have some pictures coming up here of that. So that everybody knows, we're fishing one side. The river's flowing from left to right, okay? So it's going downstream to the right. And Joey hooks up, and I land the fish almost where this video is, right down here by this island. And I turn around, and I see Ron. His rod is bent over, and I'm like, oh, my God. We have one net. Because we had a group of 8. But the way that we worked it was you, myself, Kirk, and Joey, we started mid-river at the Douglason, and we worked our way down every morning. Whereas the other 4 guys, a little bit older, they can't make that walk, so they took the boat up into the lower part of the estuary, and we met them down there later in the day, usually around noon, 1, 2 o'clock. So you put this next fish on. Now, I still have Joey's fish in the net, and he's like 50 yards upstream from me, and I'm like, oh, my God, I got to net Ron's fish, because at this point, I think maybe you've had like 4 fish landed. So, like, every fish is precious. Like, it's got to happen somehow.
Yep.
So I'm like, I can't get rid of Joey's fish. He's got to get the picture. So I literally just take my teeth and I cut his tippet, and I'm like, take your line. And now you're starting to get spooled. You're now in your backing, and you're below me. So I'm running with the fish in the net, trying to keep the fish in the water. And it was around one rock, it was around another rock, and you see me like grabbing your line, and I'm pulling it off the rock, and you feel your rod going loop, loop, right? And then all of a sudden, I made one sweep, and I have 2 fish in the net, and you're like, Matty D! I'm like, I don't know how this happened.
Yeah. In fact, I kind of timed it. When you were fighting, or when you were netting Joey's, I kind of waited a moment, because I didn't, and then I'm like, I'm going to catch a fish.
Right.
So, like, I'm just thinking, he'll be already netted by the time, like, Maddie's got to work on my fish. And you weren't quite ready, so the double net works.
It worked for sure, yeah. So one of the things that I think is interesting, did you start to feel, as you drifted, right, we're bottom bouncing, did you start to feel at times the subtle takes? And did you know, like maybe you drifted through and you're like, oh, I just hit a fish, but I missed it. But he might still be there on the next pass. Is that what you started to feel?
Yeah, I will say that the split shot
That's the angry water, by the way.
Sweet.
That was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So the split shot kind of tricks you, because as it's dragging bottom, you click, 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 click.
Yep.
You have to learn the difference between that click and a take.
Yes.
And sometimes maybe for you, because you've done it for so long. For me, I was kind of lifting to try to, I got a fish on, and I didn't. And you said, well, if you think you do, just kind of set it. And so I learned that. But there was a time when we were further downstream with the guys in the boat where you just kind of yelled, lift. I lifted, and I hooked into a fish. I didn't even know. I mean, you're away from a distance, and you tell me to lift at the exact time, and I'm on a fish. I clearly lost a lot of fish, and I didn't even know it.
Right. So from a distance, I'm watching you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, I didn't want to hover over you. That would be the worst experience of your life, right? So you're so good of an angler that I don't have to worry about trying to teach you how to fish, right? We had to teach you how to roll cast and blah, 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 blah. But what I would watch is your line, and it would pause. And I know right then and there, that pause was a fish taking, and whether he hooked himself or not. And that's why I was like, lift, because, you get a bow in your line. And I want you to pull it tight, because that helps to set the hook, and all of a sudden you get this explosion, which you saw numerous times. Fish,
I think the game changer for me, Matty, was kind of having that
the Kirk
line
technique.
the Kirk technique, a little separate, because it's kind of like conventional fishing, where you kind of keep your hand on the line to feel like a plastic worm bite, which is very subtle.
Yep.
And once I did maybe added that to my kind of like technique that I was consistent in, I started connecting with more fish.
And I mean, so that's what I meant by saying I didn't have to teach you how to fish. Like, you had that connection already, right? And then Kirk showed you his little technique, which is to hold the line separate. I like to lock underneath, and I stay there because I feel everything through the rod. Now, the difference is, I gave you my 9-weight 9-foot rod, and you saw me. I was either using my 11-foot switch rod or my 14-foot spay. So there's a little bit more difference of feel because of the length of the rod, right?
Yeah, for
and a
sure.
little bit easier to maybe roll cast and things like that because I have more backbone in the rod to bend and stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But really, really unbelievable stuff. We continue to just let this video run here. We mentioned Browns. This is Alex here. That's capping the green hat. And Alex has got a beautiful brown, which we then released here as we get a good video of it. This fish, we had to spend some extra time to revive, I should say, here, because he was out of water a little bit longer than we liked, but it was the first real pretty male brown, and we wanted to get some good shots of it. And you can see the one GoPro behind, the one GoPro on the side. I think you had a GoPro on your head. You would switch it and put it on your chest. You had the water case for the phone. I mean, so let's ask you the question. Did you enjoy the fishing? Because it's totally different than, put the guys aside. Let's just talk about the core fishing itself. Was it not as exciting? Was it exciting? Was it something you'd want to do again? And I want you to be completely honest.
Yeah, sure. Super fun experience.
Right.
I will say, in all honesty, I've fished harder than I've ever fished before. Honestly, I've never put waders on at 5:45 in the morning and taken them off at 7:30 at night.
And run through the hills like we had to that one time.
In spikes, all day long. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I've never fished harder, but I've never had more fun fishing. It was a little frustrating at first because I was learning the technique.
Yep.
I still learned the technique, but I was really learning the technique from nothing.
Yep.
A little bit of frustration at myself, like I got it, like I did a good cast and then I bomb a cast, and so. But as I continued to learn and adapt and get coached, it became less of thinking about the technique and and kind of the mechanics, and it became more focused on the beauty of nature around me, connecting with fish I've never connected with, like I said in that intro.
Yep.
I would do it again in a heartbeat, man.
That's great to hear. But you're right. So the one thing when I invited you on this trip, we kind of had a little meeting and a little lunch, and I said, it's hardcore fishing because we are up at 4:30 in the morning. We grab our coffee and we're on the river and we're waiting. Literally we're on the river at dark, waiting for first light to go out to the spot to start casting or whatever. Because in New York State, it's 20 minutes before sunup and 20 minutes after sundown is your legal fishing time. And literally we used every legal minute of fishing time that we could. Yeah. Your body certainly felt it for sure. Yeah. It was definitely a lot of fun.
Yeah, it must have taken me a week to recover, to be
I was
honest.
going to ask you, how were your muscles after that, right?
Yeah, I mean, my arm, my wrist, my fingers. Yeah, you appreciate what you have, especially when you're feel as sore as you did. You really had a good time, and
You did, and again, you did well. All right, so getting into some pictures, we saw some video here. We're going to roll things back just a bit here.
Yep.
This is that first salmon that elderly gentleman let you kind of get into. This is what we call a pretty dark fish. It had a good pull, but it didn't really fight, right? Yeah. So, but it was still something to get you on here. And then you release the fish, head upstream. This is the Atlantic salmon. And I know it's kind of small here, so we'll bring up a tighter shot here. Again, unbelievable. Yes, it's tiny, but you got the unicorn of the river. I mean, it really is fantastic. So, did you? I know you're friends with Alex McCrickard, and we talked about that on the drive up, and he was really stoked that you were going. Have you had a chance to talk with him since you've been back? And how was that story? What did he think of your experience?
Yeah, I've talked to several of I call them my fishing friends that are kind of local, some of which have been up to do this type of fishing, and others that would love to do this kind of fishing. Super stoked for me that I had the opportunity. I think the way I described the experience kind of showed how awesome it was, just because, we're passionate guys, and we really, in my YouTube videos, I do it just to share my passion And that's what and that's the kind of conversation we had, and they were super stoked that I connected.
It really was pretty awesome. Getting into some fish here. This is a guy we saw on the river. So this shot here, this is at Connie's Run. That's Joey in the red, and then you and Kirk are in the back right there. You guys were fishing. So Connie's Run is a series of different slot water, and so you're fishing the different slots, looking for steelhead laying on the back end where salmon will be in the front and the eggs are rolling down. So you got to fish with my mentor, Steve. Crazy guy, a little awesome guy, big Boston fan. We can't fault him for that. I mean, and the guy walking behind here, and this was what we talked about. I said, we love to have a lot of fun. And Steve landed this little steelhead, and then Alex comes in the back and gives him the bunny ears, and we're all laughing, But really good time for sure here. Beautiful steelhead here by Joey. Getting some fish. Kirk with a couple of steel. Just going through some different pictures here. Just a great time. There's Paul, who came to Alaska with me. Paul, older gentleman, loves to fish. Sometimes I think the fishing might be a little too fast for him. Sometimes the fishing is a little too fast for me too, right? So, but we all have some fun here. Little steel action for me. Took me a while. I was blanked for the first 2 days because I was so much trying to work with you that I wasn't really fishing. And then all of a sudden I'm like, I got it. You're like, Matty, you got to fish. I'm like, all right, I'll fish. So gorgeous steelhead here from you. Getting some shots there. We had some beautiful underwater shots as well. Dude, look at the smile on your face. Yeah. I mean, just great stuff. Joey landed a beautiful female brown. This was down on the lower estuary. And let's see here. Phil was, okay, so you mentioned this. You're like, even in your video, like, Phil is a heck of a fisherman. Yeah. He really has that touch. Yes. I mean, but even good for him, he's landing only about 40% of his fish. Like, I mean, they just get off. I mean, they just find ways, right? So one of the things we were trying to teach you and you started to understand was rod tip up, downstream bend, upstream bend, depending on where the fish is, you've got to change the angle of your rod because you want to have the fly kind of this way, right? Not this way, because this way it's going to pull right out. Yep. It took you a little bit to learn that.
It did. And it took like on-the-job training.
Right.
You needed to be coached like while you were working a fish. Yeah. Steve kind of shared the whole walk the dog technique. Another thing, I kind of planted my feet. I tended to back up a little bit because I felt like I needed more tension on the line. And in order to do that, backing up gives me tension. You're like, stop backing up. And I
might have yelled at you a couple times. I'm sorry.
It's okay. So I did the walk the dog. I did the kind of steering, trying to get the fish into shallower water where it's kind of less apt to just go ballistic and shoot downstream or upstream. So constant learning experience.
It really, really is. And once you learn, you get to really kind of get into it again. We would fish a couple rods apart at times, depending on what the river was, the run was. One night, like this one here, we fished literally until 6:15, I think, and I knew we had a 35-minute walk out, and we were huffing it. Oh, man. I think we all
in waders and boots where, you're not exactly very cool.
So bad. This was fun. This is the salmon that I caught. We had done a couple of steelhead in this one hole. I think it was on Thursday, maybe. I can't remember the day exactly. And I hooked into a fish, and it was fighting really odd, right? It wasn't steelhead. We knew right away. And you're like, Matty, I think it's a salmon. And sure enough, it was. It just kind of dogged and dogged and dogged. And literally right at the net, the first time, it had gotten off. But it went right back to where it sat. And my second cast at that same spot, thunk. And this time, of course, it had been fought for so long, it came in pretty easily. So, okay, if people look really closely at this image here, you're going to see two steelhead in the net. This is what Ron was talking about. This is the double net trick. There's a better shot. Yeah. Joey's fish and your fish. And the trick was I had to remember whose fish was whose. I will tell you, you beat Joey here. Joey's got a nice fish there. Your fish is a little bit fatter. Here's the comparison. Yep. Those are two sweet fish, by the way.
Yeah, that was picture perfect, man.
Just
so cool.
So much fun here. Yep. And what I think you knew this going in. I knew easily fit in with my group. You're a good guy. You're a straight shooter. You like to have fun. You can joke around. You love to fish. Your passion showed. And that's why my guys loved you, man. They really did. It was so awesome here. Here you are with the GoPro in your head. This is down low and just so much fun. Paul, it was Phil and Paul there. Another picture of my ugly salmon. I call it ugly. There's that beautiful thing here. So we have just a great time here. One of the things we got to really see, because we left here, we weren't at peak foliage here, but when we got there, I mean, there was some gorgeous colors on the river. You caught a rock, by the way. Good job.
I
yeah,
did.
Another species. This is what we call shell, by the way.
I thought it was a rockfish.
Sitting on the rocks. I mean, look at the bluebird skies we had.
Yep.
It was just incredible for sure.
Yeah, I had a shot of, I was cooling off. You do a lot of walking, and in waders, not the most breathable, even with Gore-Tex waders.
Right.
Sit in the river, cool
Yeah.
off, you know?
The water temperature was about 54, 55, and the air temperature was almost near 80 a
Yeah.
day or two, so it was pretty good to sit back. That's just a great shot. This was the clay hole. We got in there one afternoon. Water was gin clear. You could see the spawning salmon, so you knew there had to be steelhead.
Yeah.
We didn't have any luck at this particular time hooking up, but it was nice. You got to see a good 2 miles or a mile and a half of the river. Lots of different water to fish,
Yeah.
different ideas there.
Yeah, you took me around as well, took me some to the public access areas you
Yep.
mentioned before. You kind of taught me the ropes, kind of showed me the ropes
Yep.
initially that first day. But yeah, I saw a good amount, and then I pulled up Google Maps to see where did we go.
Right.
And it was really interesting to see where the DSR was and where we kind of went around, just to get a lay of the land from a satellite view. It was really, really cool.
Really, really interesting. Yeah, so the Salmon River from pretty much the upper fly zone to the mouth of the river is about 13 miles. And there's probably about 12 miles of true fishable water where you can fly fish or spin fish. You can do both there. You took this great shot, by the way. A lot of it
Yeah.
was getting time just to bond because, when you're starting to fish at, 6:45, 7 o'clock, 7:15, you fish for like 4 hours straight. You're like, I think I need a little break here for a second. I got to have like a granola bar. This was just a line that we would kind of form, So a lot of people call this combat fishing because you're stacked next to each other. And when it's your own group, it's fine. But when it's other people stepping on top of you, it gets a little bit tough at times, right? So, but it does make it fun. This was before one of our walks out. On the last evening. These are our guys. They jumped in the boat there, and they took... So the nice thing was, and I think you appreciate this, we walked in the morning with some gear. They came up in the boat with their gear plus some of our other gears. We had to carry all the rods. But on the way out, they took all the gear out, and we just had to walk back up, which was kind of nice. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially after a long day of fishing,
Yeah.
climbing rocks, and you're using muscles and stabilizers like you don't ever use.
Right, because
we're doing it all day.
Yeah, that water's pushing against you the whole time.
Yep.
And so you're like, you don't feel like you're fighting the water, but you really are. And then,
Yeah.
to walk in it. We did some fly tying one night because, we thought we needed more flies, It just really ended up being a fun time for sure. I'm just going through some of the remaining pictures here. It's just great stuff here. All right, so Ron, let's recap. These are the guys, as you well know. That's the whole group there. From you on the left-hand side to me, to Steve, Kirk, Joey, Phil, Alex, and Paul. And the last morning, which was Friday morning, we did a little breakfast, and we were all on our merry way. Ron, you do a lot of fishing in the area. You do a lot of social media stuff. I put this up here. Hope you don't mind, so people can follow you if they'd like to. Fishtails RVA on Instagram. I think you also have a YouTube channel as well.
Yep.
Is it the same things?
Same name, yep.
Fishtails RVA. All right, so let's have a pure discussion. The mic's going to be yours now. Give me your final synopsis on the whole week, the drive, the fishing, everything. I know you kind of put it into different spots here. The mic is now yours.
Yeah. Maddie, first off, thank you for inviting me. I reached out to you on Facebook saying, hey, you going up north to fish? And you kind of sent me a proposal. Like, hey, this is what I got. So thank you so much for kind of having the confidence like in me to do something like this. It is not for everyone.
Right.
A ton of just fun, the camaraderie. All your guys, I can see why they're all friends. Everybody's a different personality. You get along great. It was just a week of laughing, eating good food, because every night different people prepare different meals.
First of all, can I stop you there?
Yeah.
Thank you. So we decided, you, me, and Kirk, we all chipped in, and we did a filet mignon roast. And we had 2 ovens, and you figured out a way to time everything out, because I was a little skeptical on the timing, but it was awesome. Go ahead, continue on. Sorry.
Just like I told you on the trip, I'd never spent a week away from my wife on a vacation that wasn't,
together.
It's always together. Right. So this was, and she's super supportive and go, and in fact, she's like, go again. I got plans,
go
Ron. Again, plural. So, I would do it again in a heartbeat. It wasn't just fishing. It was meeting and making new friends, creating those lifelong kind of memories. This is a trip I'll honestly never forget. And you've been doing it, year after
1993.
year for decades.
Yeah.
So, it was just from the start, getting up at an ungodly hour to have you pick me up to make the 7 or 8 hour drive north, to the week of fishing and the guys and the experience to the drive back. It was just wrapped in a bow. I'm still smiling from it.
That's awesome. And again, from my heart, man, we loved having you. I can say that for all my guys, and you are more than welcome back. It can always be, Ron is part of the group now, because you absolutely loved it. We saw it, and you were just one of the guys. You fit right in, so really, really cool. So,
thanks, Matty.
Yeah, man, it was a lot of fun. So, all right, we're going to wrap up this edition here of Off the Hook with Matty D. Ron, thank you so much, and we're going to get out and do some more fishing, and tell your wife, I have some other plans of some experiences we can do.
She's all ears.
Oh, sounds good. Once again, everyone, that was Ron Binstock. He joined me for Off the Hook with Matty D, and we went to the Salmon River, and he said he liked it. We'll have another episode of Off the Hook with Matty D coming up next week. Until then, have fun. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Off the Hook with Matty D.